Pete DiStefano. Welcome to Out of the Hourglass. How you doing this morning? Or this afternoon? It's
Yeah,
afternoon already.
I'm doing well. Cold, but well.
I
Doing
know we were just both complaining about the cold weather that just won't seem to quit here in the what doesn't really matter where you are these days, whether you're in like North Carolina or you're in Maine or you're in Rhode Island. It's cold pretty much everywhere. So unless you are in sunny California, you're in luck. But
yeah.
Pete, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you've been a long time Summit client. You are a part of the Legacy Mastermind group. You've had a long leadership transformation journey that I have been told about through some of your coaches. And I thought it was worth doing a conversation around that. So thank you for being open and willing to share.
Yeah, of course. I love that stuff.
But before we jump in, for those who don't have the privilege of knowing you, can you give us a quick rundown of who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
Yeah, sure. So Peter DiStefano, DiStefano Brothers Companies. We have a few different companies. We started with a construction company, rolled into floor coatings. We have a closets team installing closets. We just started an electrical company last year.
Wow.
And then we have our overhead management company, which we're looking to figure out ways to earn revenue from that team too. So there's five teams now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and we are in the Northeast in Rhode Island. We currently, depending on which department, but Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts touch all three states and maybe more.
The DiStefano name's taken over. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's the hope. So
You started this business with just the construction side, right? Is that correct? And
yeah,
this was in 2006. So where that company was then to where it is now, that's a pretty big transformation. Did you ever envision this is what it was going to become way back in the day?
no, not a clue. I remember 2006. I started the company. I was working as a tile installer for a contractor, and I just hated the way he did business. And because I was, so wise at 20, whatever, 24, I knew
Yes.
better than this person that had been doing it forever.
Yeah.
And I just felt like there'd have to be a better way. So, it took me like 6 months to quit my job. And then when I finally quit my job, I started this business, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be this great entrepreneur. I'm going to start this, huge company. And I realized I just started another job because I didn't have any systems or processes or anything in
Mhm.
place. So yeah, no. So I had no clue where I was going or what I was doing. I just thought I could do a better job than my previous employer. And, because of that, I was going to make lots of money, I thought.
You have to, I think, have some kind of entrepreneurial spark in you to see something and be like, I can do it better. I'm going to start something. And not only have the thought, but also to take the jump. That's half the battle. And not only did you take that jump, and you've now taken it multiple times over in starting all of these different divisions. I mean, and that takes a visionary in a sense to be able to see opportunity and get excited and be able to kind of think about what could be. Have you always been a little bit of a visionary in your life?
Visionary, big dreamer,
Yeah.
daydreamer, whatever I've been told in the past. Yeah. I mean, I think, my mind races. I have ADHD. So I'm like super all over the place, shiny lure. And I'm just always looking at a million things, thinking like, what else is there? What else could be done? How could this be better? So it almost like is a coping mechanism for me to be able to, I need like 15 tabs open in my brain at once so that
Yeah.
that's the way I work best. So just that, looking at like a service trade, which to me, the bar is so low there, in regards to
Mhm.
good service. And, so I've always just thought, yeah, I think I've always had these ideas to do other types of things. And I've always been driven entrepreneurial to say, I think I could do that better.
I don't want to say you're never satisfied, but it's almost like there's always just more that can be done. And when you say the service level or the bar is low, once you start doing things well, I mean, your brand is known so well in your area. It's, well, we could do this. I mean, it becomes easier for your company to do more because of the brand that you've established and the quality and the service that you all provide.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're so smart." We just listen to our customers, right? Like, so
Yeah.
the evolution of how this worked, the construction side. I'll jab at my painter friends here. So we started the construction business and we grew. And it was at a summit meeting. I can't remember which one it was, South Carolina maybe, or Charleston or something like that. And I was
Yeah.
hanging with some guys after, just drinking beers. And they were like, oh, this new model business is great, like great GP, but heavy equipment is a nightmare. And I just was like, well, what are you guys talking about? And they started talking about this floor coatings business. And I was like, well, what do you mean by heavy equipment? And they were talking about grinders, which to me, that's not a heavy piece of equipment, but if you're a painter and you only use a power washer, that is a heavy piece of equipment.
Fair enough.
We started to go down that road and we just thought, A, there could be an opportunity to make money. And there were other people, like we'd ask our clients, hey, did you ever think about coating your concrete or what is your garage? So, that kind of spurred from that. And then in the garage space, clients were like, yeah, now our floor looks amazing, but everything else looks like crap.
Right.
That's how we got into the closets game because we wanted to use storage for their garages. And, I had listened to another entrepreneur talk about like he makes decisions growing his business. He looks at his P&L at the end of the year and he sees where he spends money. And then he says, his example was like real estate attorney or real estate property manager. And he says, I'm paying someone this much money. And if I looked at a company to start, and if I was paying $500,000 worth of revenue, I could start a small property management company. So that kind of triggered my thinking into, I looked at my P&L and said, wow, I pay all these subcontractors tons of money. Electricians, one year we paid 1.2 million. And I was like, that's probably like a halfway decent sized electrical company that we could start. So
yeah,
I've always looked at these, like listen to the market or just look at other opportunities and said, oh, we could fill that void.
yeah. Or seeing a problem on your P&L and saying, instead of like complaining about it, you're like, let's do it better. Let's do,
Yeah.
let's bring it in house.
Yep. And then, as we've grown, I think, we've started to realize we've become a sales and marketing company too, that happens to do home service or this
Yeah.
other thing. So it's just like, okay, a lot of times it's the same client. And if it's not the same client, how do we reach out to them when we're using the same technologies, back end systems and things like that. So it just makes it a lot easier for us to keep bolting it on. So it's funny when you talk about starting the business. I remember how terrified I was to start the first one. And I was like, oh my God. And now we've started these 5 and I don't know how to do the process. It's funny. Like I say that jokingly, but I don't know how to do it. A friend of mine was like, well, how do you start to do this? I'm like, I don't know. I call my lawyer or call this person. It has been one of those things where I've done it so much, but we've delegated it out and had other people do it. I haven't learned myself, but.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, one of the most successful entrepreneurs or business people, I think, set the example of you surround yourself with really smart people in different functions. You have mentors, you have coaches. I mean, whatever it may be, but you recognize that you can't do it alone. You surround yourself with great employees. I mean, have there been some like critical, whether it be people or kind of resources along the way that you kind of credit to helping you get that wheel turning as fast as it has?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I think it's always the people. I think one good trait I have is to be curious. So I'm willing to ask questions and just sit there and listen. And I was telling a story the other day about Steve Talkington. I was at this beach bar in Rhode Island called the Ocean Mist. It's this amazing bar. And Mike Moffat, who another sub member, brought me, I was hanging out with Mike and I was sitting at the bar and I started talking to Steve. I didn't know who he was or what he did. And I just was curious. And I said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm helping Mike grow his business. I own a painting company. I'm like, oh, I've never heard of it. Where is it? He's like, oh, in California. I can run it out of my RV. And I was just like, what? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And he started asking me questions of like, first I was embarrassed because I was like, I should know those answers, these KPIs or revenue per hour. And I didn't know what, I thought he was speaking another language, but the lifestyle, the freedom, the opportunity, like he really got the hook in me into being like, I want to learn more about that. So
yeah,
obviously Steve and the Nolan Group have been like instrumental to me. I did a Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business program, which
nice.
and another like those two things I would say were the biggest growth opportunities for me to just recognize chances or opportunities or people. And then just the people, right? Like, who, not how, right? I thought I was like the original who, not how, but I didn't know it was who, not how, I would always joke and say to myself, how many more people do I have to hire so I never have to do payroll again?
There you go.
Like it was my way of doing, thinking that.
Yeah.
And I've had lots of amazing people that have changed the trajectory of the company as I've grown.
That's huge. I mean, it just shows like who you surround yourself with, being curious, being open to sitting at a bar and talking to somebody. You really never know where those conversations are going to lead you. And even though you didn't know what some of those KPIs were, what that language was then, I mean, gosh, look how far you've come now. I mean, I can only imagine the number of KPIs you guys have as part of your business. Like, speak that language fluently, and it's how you remain being able to continue to grow and to be able to run so many different divisions. When you grow a business too, a lot has to change over time. A lot has to transform. Obviously, KPIs being one of them, the knowledge of certain things, but also so so does your leadership and your ability to transform, your vision to actually implementing it. What was 2006 to maybe 2015, Pete, like when it came to leadership and being a visionary? Like, do you yourself recognize that there's been a shift in yourself?
Absolutely. It's so hard. Sometimes it's like a lifetime ago, 2006, to
Yeah.
really reference that. The first 6 years of being in business, it was just another job. There was like me and three people, like really didn't, I mean, we didn't get aggressive until we started with you guys and Steve, 13 or so years ago. So
Hmm.
first 6 years, we're just going to outwork everybody, work harder. I felt like I've always had pretty good emotional intelligence where I can kind of read the room or read the people or understand what people need out of life. And me realize like guys that work for me, a lot of blue collar guys, they can't deal with customers and things like that. So let me handle the things you don't do well, and then you do the things that you do well. So I've
Hmm.
always realized that that's been a strength of mine and helped me grow. But yeah, no, I mean, I feel like it's a cycle, right? Like I feel like the leadership, when you're small and you have a few people, the type of leader you need to be then is obviously way different when you have 150 people, right? Like
Yes.
you have to learn and change. And I think I've been adaptable to say, hey, I'm going to go through this process with 20 people and see what that looks like. And me try to manage 19 of those people and just like all report to me. And what does that look like? To then, aligning teams and giving, direct ownership to each team and one
Hmm.
general manager for each team. So, I have to be more calculated now and I have to be more intentional now. And I'm not saying I always am. That's where I know when it works. A lot of times, and I struggle with this. It's happened a few times in the last year or so is, when there are problems, sometimes depending on the severity of them, you interject yourself to what level. And, I try to, you're in this like, okay, is this a problem I need? I'll use Liz as an example. Is this a problem I need Liz to painfully go through so she can learn it?
Yeah.
Or do we have enough time for that or resources to allow for that? So I think I've had to, I have to be able to pivot but
That's really interesting. I like how you put that because there are moments where you have to recognize that I need my right hand person to be able to handle this because they need to learn. I know that they can. It's a good learning experience until we have the time. And then sometimes things are urgent and you need them to be involved, but you also recognize when you need to be involved in it and you have to
and
be a
it
little bit
does.
more quick on your feet.
Yeah, and it can, and it can be good or bad, right? Like you can
Yeah.
step in a relationship that you've been trying to grow for so long, but you're just like, hey, I don't have the time or the resources to wait for you to learn this. So I want to interject myself, but I'm a hard learner. So I need the pain of like, oh, the reason we didn't sign that change order. I need people to go through the pain of doing
Yeah.
things to be like, oh man, we're never getting paid for that. And now I got to argue with the customer over it because that's how I truly would learn it.
Were there any ever moments where you have specifically realized, and maybe it's through kind of those progressions of the quantity of employees that you had and how the teams were organized, but where you had moments where you're like, that didn't go the way as a leader of this business, that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. I need to make a mental note to kind of shift how I approach things going forward for the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every day, I think,
Yeah.
just in regard, like continuous improvement is a value of ours. And I want to be, always going and you have a plan moving forward and you think this is the way we're going to do a thing. And then you're like, oh yeah, this is no big deal. They love this idea. They're always been on board. They're going to get right behind everything I say. And then when you drop it and they go, oh my God, that's not the reaction I was expecting. What do I do? How fast can I pivot and change? How do I address these needs that we have as a company? So yeah, you got to be fluid.
It's a skill to be fluid. I think you were saying earlier, having emotional intelligence. I think that is such a critical skill. Not everybody's born with it, and I think it can be taught, but not to the level of like it being truly innate. But I think fluidity and adaptability again can also be taught, but can be really hard for somebody who is maybe just naturally more structured, doesn't like change. I mean, that's tough. The reality is, I mean, business is messy. There's always going to be problems. There will always be challenges. And to be fluid enough to adapt to them as they come and handle them with grace is an endless pursuit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole being able to pivot like anything is the most crucial part of leadership and business owner is, you start with a plan, you think it's going to go that way, anything, and you have to be able to pivot so fast, which in my previous, with my ADHD, that has been a struggle because I have a plan in my head and I go, how am I going to, I'm way overwhelmed, all the stuff to do. And now when I get up in the morning, the plan is executed in my head. And then you walk in the door and, a bomb
Yeah.
gets dropped and it's out the window. But before in the past, it could ruin my whole day, to pivot and be able, and
Mhm.
now I've learned that like, no, I just have to be able to deal with the thing and move on and not make a bigger deal of the thing than it really is.
So what have you done like specifically for yourself to learn how to pivot? I mean, there's development along the way. All leaders go through it in different capacities. Obviously, going through the Goldman Sachs program, working with a coach, I'm sure Turkey talking through challenges is a big part of that. But are there things that you have done to personally stay disciplined or personally like focus on pivoting? Like, are there tools in your toolbox that you can share?
Sure. It's funny. My kids have been the biggest teacher of how to pivot,
Huh.
like it, in my life of being able to, I'm self-employed. I can control a lot of my own life, right? Like I can
Yeah.
when I want and not, but with kids, that is right out the window. I'm like, my hardest negotiation is begging my 5-year-old to get in the car on time so I can get her to daycare. So I'm not late for my meeting,
I love it. Yeah.
So I think when I've always, when I've tried to be a control freak and it just doesn't work, I think now it's like, okay, what's the end goal? I always go back to what's the end goal? What's the intent out of this, right? Like there's a pivot. What is the end goal? And are we in line with that end goal still? So
Hmm.
that's been the big thing for me. What am I really trying to get out of it? I don't want to be right. I don't need to be right. I've learned over the years being right is a silly thing.
Yeah.
What's the end goal? And really to focus on the end goal so that however we have to pivot to get to that end goal,
Hmm.
because I know how that can affect everyone. I think, self-reflection, I do some yoga and meditation has been very helpful to me.
Nice.
I think being able to understand that I can't control everything as much as I'd want to. I think learning not to give everything else that much power to let it control me sometimes is something that I'm like, I want to stay focused and disciplined. And, again, something throws it out the window and I don't want to give it that much power over my life. So I have to be like, okay, if I freak out or we change drastically, I'm empowering that now. So
Yeah. It's interesting when sometimes those little things that you think are not gonna bother you, like really can kind of take control and like stick with you for far longer than they should. But then you have to say things like that, like I'm not gonna give this the time to or let it power over me. Like I'm bigger than that. But that takes, gosh, again, some EQ, some pausing, reflecting, and choosing. I mean, to not just like jump the gun and respond to how we sometimes just desire to respond. But those behaviors don't work when you're running a large organization with multiple divisions. You have to kind of operate in a controlled environment. And that just not only from a behaviorally, but also from, I think, how you show up to meetings, how you run leadership planning. I mean, one thing that specifically Brian and Catherine here have both spoken to is how you have become personally very structured with your planning process. And that wasn't always necessarily the case, more so being a visionary, big ideas, but not necessarily following a structure to get there. What does your planning practice look like now in practice?
yeah, I was one of the notes you had put in the card for me to read, and I was thinking about that. It's like I feel like we've gotten way better with that, right? Like, I mean, we used to
Yeah.
just shoot from the hip, Steve is coming into town, we're gonna work on this thing and figure it out. Now it's
Hmm.
like, and it's funny you say that. And I appreciate Catherine and Brian saying that. I feel like we're not organized enough, right? Like I want to get down to the quarterly, monthly. Like it's this planning thing is never gonna stop for me, and like
Yeah.
being hyper focused on it. So I think
But it shouldn't. That's good. And it shouldn't. Like it's
100%.
constantly progress.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think it's important. The last couple of years I've been trying to explain to my team how important this is and how
Hmm.
planning, because it's easy to be a reactionist, reaction to that, but not to be planned and organized. And it never
Hmm.
happens, honestly, if not in the level that we need it to. It never happens unless we are, intentional about it and
Yeah.
precise. And even, last year, year before when they came into town, we thought we had enough time. And this year I was like, I need more time. I need like half a day for each company. And now it's like, we probably need 2 days for each company to really dial into where we need to be.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to, I'm even just, feedback from your team and my team is like, we need like a planning 2 months before the real big planning, because we need to have that dialed in and then running the cadence. And, sometimes no matter how much you plan, some parts of it feel rushed or not right. And it's just like, oh, I wish we had worked out some of these little details earlier. So then when we got to the time to plan, we could have planned better. And
Well, I love that you say that because when we talk about annual planning, we always talk about just the preparation and time. You don't just show up and begin throwing things like, what are we going to talk about today? I mean, there's a lot of work that can go into a very successful planning meeting, from selecting the PDIs to having ownership of those but like the work that needs to go into showing up with topics that are going to be presented well so that there's context that then allows for the right level of discussion, debate, whatever it may be. The larger that you get, clearly you need more time for that preparation. And so it's interesting how planning is probably never going to look exactly the same for you guys year over year. It's going to continue to evolve because it has to.
absolutely. And that's what, that's what we hope to do too, right? Like we're always trying to be better. And it's like, from what learned experience from last year, how it went last year, what do we feel like we missed or we're short on? How do we incorporate that in? And then what are the results out of it, right? Like you can plan all this stuff, but if no outcome or no delivery from that, then you're planning the wrong things, you're working on the wrong things. I think I've learned to be adjusting and being more nimble. And like we used to set rocks in like December for the next year, but by March, April, that rock might have gone out the window and it might not even be relevant to today, like is at that point. And then it's like, oh my God, that one person doesn't work for me, or we decide not to sell that anymore, or whatever happened. And it's like, you got to be throwing that out the window, and you can't say, but we spent 2 days working on this to get ready for the whole year. If it's wrong, it's still wrong just because you spent time and resources on it, you have to pivot. And I think the openness and the willingness of people on the team to be able to understand that is the key here. Like you can have a plan, but like Mike Tyson always says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. We all have, we all have different plans, and we all get punched in the face.
It's so true. What's your role in these it is in an annual planning meeting or it's in quarterly planning. What role do you take kind of in the room when you're amongst the leaders in your business, when you're amongst your management team? Brian speaks to this often, like he's something that he has worked on, as he has a high eye, something that gets excited about planning. He can kind of soak up all the air in the room because he just wants to talk and share his ideas. And he's recognized over time that he needs to sit back, let others speak first. Where do you fall? Like where are you on that spectrum? How do you show up to these meetings?
Yeah, which, I think I do some of these things to, fit my lifestyle, but like the businesses are all different maturities. So they all need different things, right? Like the electrical company is so fun and exciting right now because it's new. Like we started it because I found the right guy. I didn't even know what we're going to sell, what we're going to do. And like, that was very exciting for me. My construction team that's been around for a long time, that has some senior members on that team, that is a role where I sit back and listen. And I say, let these guys fight it out. Let these team work through it. Like if there are some core principle things that I feel like are important, I will try to shift the conversation that way, just so that I ensure that what I need is getting addressed, or my thoughts are, but that team, I try to sit back and watch them, at coding similar, Liz is a strong leader over there, and there's some people that have been on the team for a while. So they're working through some issues, and I'm kind of just making sure it aligns with what I want, and, give them the runway, and then just also understand, like, if I have to pull the cord and say, no, we're not going that way, then I can do that. So it is nice that they usually are, for me, the different levels of businesses, it allows me to kind of have different hats on in the room.
That's a good perspective. I never really thought about it that way. It almost got it like it satisfies like the different like needs in you, like one being able to sit back and listen and let like your leaders lead, but then other areas where you can be a little bit more involved because the business needs your guidance.
Sure.
Not every business owner has that these days. Sometimes, they got, whether one division or two divisions, they don't get to necessarily have the hands-on involvement of starting something new that they so kind of often desire in a sense. So it's kind of cool that you've built an organization that allows you to kind of dip in and dip out kind of as the business is kind of need your guidance.
Yeah, and I think for me, it helps me, keeps me energized and relevant to certain things where, there's that passion in me for the serial entrepreneur to keep trying new things. So it's like, oh, I get to learn and find new things and try these stuff.
Hmm.
And then there's other stuff where it's like really deep, heavy conversation that I really am like perplexed and like I've been in this construction trade for 30 years, 35 years, and I don't know the answer and I have to work real hard to figure that out. So it kind of helps me fill all the voids.
In those moments where you are perplexed, where you've not come across that situation before, what do you do? Where does that take you?
It's humbling a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like it is, it's funny. I meet with a lot of people and I've got, local people come up to me and like, how'd you do this? And how'd you do that? And I'm like, I feel like such a poser, like a faker, like, cause I don't,
No.
like, I don't know. I don't, I don't have any secret sauce or any of that stuff, but then and I look at that and I puff up my chest and I feel good about myself. And then I get humbled by one of these problems where I'm like, I've been able to grow, like develop my groups, the legacy group that I belong to. I mean, those guys
Yeah.
would be screwed without them. And there are times where, I'm like, I got another call. I don't know really if I can fit this in. And there are times I had one last week that I was just like, these guys are changing my life, man. And there's the answer's out there, right? You just have to
Yeah.
be comfortable enough to ask and look far enough to find it. And I think that's kind of what I've been able to do is just understand who am I going to reach out to if I am overwhelmed, or with AI and all this technology
Gosh,
nowadays, like
yeah.
at your fingertips, and like you just got to be looking in the right place and verify.
I love that because it shows, I mean, I listeners don't get mad at me for saying this, but I think that there are a lot of egos in the business owner world. But there has to be to some degree, right? Because you have to be able to believe in yourself, believe in this vision that you can create something. So there has to be a level of ego. But sometimes I think that ego can prevent a lot of business owners from asking for the help, for being vulnerable, for saying, my top line revenue might look great, but there's a lot of crap that's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes people don't necessarily want to show that. But when you're able to be vulnerable and talk to peers, surround yourself, ask questions, talk to coaches, different mentors, people in your network. I mean, as you just said, it can change the game. And that I think separates those who the humble ego versus the ego that, I don't know, it's harder to respect in a sense. If that
Yeah, I've gotten better with my self-esteem a little bit, but I've always joked and said, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. Like, I
Yeah.
want to look around and know that, like, I am lucky to be at this table because there's so many smarter people than me here, and I'm going to learn something. And, a lot of the successful people that are in my life, they're not afraid to ask questions. They
Yeah.
will ask questions of anyone, anytime, anywhere. And it's not like, oh, I don't want to ask that person. No, just ask,
Yeah.
What I've also found out is most people want to talk about what they're doing too. It's other business owners, other mentors, other people, they're excited what they did. They know typically if you're asking those questions, you've probably been at the table or at the game and they know what you've been through to get there. And they've been through a similar journey and they're willing to share that stuff. So, I've never been like, oh, I'm the best at this. I know I'm great at a lot of things, but I know that the reason I am is because I'm willing to ask and talk to people about it.
And you've also been someone who's also been very willing to share and to give, your own experiences to folks who are kind of following in your footsteps in different areas and, are facing challenges that you have, been able to conquer in the past. That sharing back also goes a long way. There's always a give and take.
100%. You have to
Yeah.
be. I don't think you can be one without the other. I don't think you're the right person, right? Like I think I know people that will ask a lot of questions, but just are takers, and they won't get as much out of the content, or
Yeah.
the context of it. But yeah, no, I was again, we're doing some commercial floor coating stuff, and Travis from Webfoot said something to me like, "Oh, I made lots of mistakes. I don't want you to have to pay for the same ones I made. Let's talk about it," right? Like,
Yeah. It's huge.
yeah, and I can appreciate that. And I understand what he's saying too. I'm like, yeah, I've paid for those mistakes. I don't need you to pay for them again to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else I want to make sure that we hit in this conversation is accountability. As a leader, not only do you have to keep yourself accountable to, you're leading the pack, you're the visionary, you're taking this group to this company to the next level, but you also have to kind of help keep your people accountable. The things that you decide in a planning session, the big rocks, well, sometimes we have to throw one out the window because it's no longer relevant. There are parts to all of this that the business doesn't grow without accountability. Has this been something that you have had to work on in your career, or is this natural for you from a skill?
No, It is not. I mean, it is, part of my emotional intelligence is my people pleasing. That's how I kind of started to
Yeah.
understand, but that doesn't make for really good accountability, right? Like, oh, I don't want to say something to someone because it might hurt their feelings, or I don't want to say it. I think as I've grown, like we put masks around feelings, like we determine what they might be, right? Like, oh, I'm anxious or I'm nervous around this, because I don't want to give the feedback because I don't want to hurt their feelings or, those types of things. And it's like my anxiety of me being able to do that. If I'm really a true people person and I really want to please them and help them, then that accountability or saying those things are the most important thing to do. And they are the people pleasing things to do. It's just really hard, right? So
Yeah.
I think for me, that's been my struggle. I have to work on it constantly. I have to also help delegate some of the holding other people accountable because I know it's not my strength. And then I think it's picking and choosing what the things I am going to hold certain people accountable for at that high level of values or things like that. I think I drive that. And if I can offload the day-to-day accountability stuff, which I'm not good at, the
Yeah.
consistent things to managers or general managers or other people to deal with that stuff, that's kind of how I work that, but the team around me is what I do and how I do it and empower them to help them hold the other people accountable.
It's totally relatable. I mean, going back to being a people pleaser, I can completely empathize with sometimes you have to have those direct conversations because not doing that is a truly a disservice to that person. And it's not about hurting feelings or trying to making somebody upset. It's you're not being authentic if you're not having those direct conversations. But that really is hard for someone like you and I who want to get along with everybody and don't want to create enemies.
Yeah. And I also think like documenting everything, right? And understanding that you're doing everything you can. So I remember in the past where, we'd have guys working for us that we'd have to fire because they weren't doing their job. And, I bring a guy in and the guy's like, oh, he sucks. He's no good. We got to get rid of him. I bring him in and I'd be like, hey, man, it's not working out. We're going to have to move on. And he's like, what? He's like, no one ever told me. And I'd be like,
Mm,
what? But now I know like if it gets to me in this level and I'm dealing with a situation like that, I know that there's a performance history and there's all this information and all this backup. So it's not like they're getting caught off guard here on feedback or, we have processes and
yeah.
systems put in place that make it easier for me to hold people accountable so that I know they've gotten we're going to give you this feedback. We're going to support you in this way. Now that I know that's happening, it's easier for me to hold them accountable. When it was gray before, that's where I would struggle.
You've learned how you need to hold up your end of the bargain, essentially,
Sure.
for it
Right.
for it to make sense.
Perfect way to say it. Yes.
To get from that gray area to a little bit be more black and white. I mean, to get to that clarity, obviously it takes time. You've been in business now. Would this be your 20th year? If you
At
guys
20 years. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. I
Yeah.
mean, so clearly congratulations. I wish you just pause there and recognize that 20 years in business is amazing. But obviously this type of transformation, not only the business growth, but your team growth, your own personal leadership growth, this stuff takes time. Obviously there's been people that have made a huge impact. Is there any specific system or process or tool that you look back on and be like, that changed the way that we operated?
In the accountability level, I think for me, it would be as much clarity, like extreme clarity, right? Like you had mentioned
Mm,
something about like we moved into this agreement. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. I think
yeah.
really trying to dive into, especially where I struggle is the details. I'm not that person. So to me, it's even more important now that it is very detailed and explained to people so that we're all on the same page.
Details really, connect to communication, communicate 10 times more than you think. I mean, it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
When you think about the next, 20 years now of this business, as the visionary, what do you hope for this to become?
It's funny. We were in my office. We had like a regional or something years ago, and Brian will remember it because in the meeting, someone was like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, $80 million. And then I was like, well, I don't even want to say it out loud because I'm scared. And Brian remembers that I said it out loud and brings it up to me often. And now I look at that and I say, obviously revenue associates what people understand this growth of a company, but I think we could just keep going. I think the opportunity that's there, I think as long as I bring on the right leadership, and
Mhm.
more people on my team, the world is our oyster. I don't think we will stop. I want to always give enough opportunity for the A players on my team to always want to stay on my team.
Yeah.
And now it's more like I want to get a senior leadership team in place so that I can be an owner again and be, more hands off and be more excited of what's going on, but make sure all my, investments in my companies are moving in the right direction. And that's giving my team members that work for me more opportunity opportunity. If I find the right people, I'm going to keep going. If we don't, then I'll just do this, and stay where we are. But and I think with the home service world, the way we are, I think with AI and my AI rant is a lot of small business owners have skills that we've learned, like school of hard knocks, right? Like like when someone doesn't pay you and you have no money left to your name and that's the money you have and you lose sleep and all, you can't learn that from AI. You can't learn
Yeah.
that from any type of technology. But my MBA that I don't have to take because my AI can teach me that now, that is a different level. So I look at this, I think the bar is low in the home service world. And I think with the knowledge that is at your fingertips nowadays, I think we could go really far. Depends on where the team wants to go.
I love that it's not just about you, that you relate back to your people in so many different ways. It comes back to who's on your team, where are they going, the leadership that you have. What's next for you as a leader? I mean, obviously, you're helping start the new electrical division. Do you foresee yourself being involved in that for a while, getting it off the ground? And also, are you working on anything personally that you're currently, developing yourself in?
It was funny. The last year, the early first half of the year, I spent a lot of time on personal development and I kind of like stepped away from it a little bit just to fill some voids at work. I need to come back to that.
Mhm.
I've made me a priority before and now I've kind of slipped in with the kids in life. It's hard, but
A
I want
lot.
to start to really focus on me as a priority and everybody does better when this priority is taken care of. So I want to work on that, and then in regards to work, I really now it's like, what are the next key senior leadership people I want to bring onto my team to really help grow this? So I know how to, tradespeople I can hire left and right. I'm good at that. When you start to bring in off staff or like senior, we're talking about a CFO or high level operational people that, I don't know how to vet them, teach them, train them. That skill is above me. So I'm excited to say, who can I help bring in to help me keep this senior level growing and then invigorated and energized too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want them to be pushed. I have team members now that I've to some extent I feel bad for because I don't personally have resources that I can train them. They're doing work above my pay grade. So I don't know how to
Yeah.
train them how to be a better financial person or a better HR person. So now I need to bring in another set of leadership. So I'm excited to hand off more leadership to other people and really, be there and say, no, really where I'm at is, where I see the future and the vision and the values and things like that and support them on, supporting the other people.
I love it. I think it'd be pretty great to work for DiStefano Brothers. I mean, and I say that genuinely, all, a part mostly because of the way that you speak about your team and what you want the opportunity for them to become, and kind of how you kind of you live your life. I mean, that sets the tone for the business and just how people are treated and respected, and what it's like to show up every day. I mean, of course there are hard times, there are challenges, but overarching, it's that culture of, are we working for someone that we respect and can believe in their values and believes in us? And the answer to that is yes in your environment. And that's huge. It's not the case in every business, trades business that exists out in the world. It can be pretty rocky in this business. So you're setting the tone for something different, which is very cool.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Pete, it's a pleasure as always talking with you. And I'm so glad that I got the chance to bring you on. Any final words that you would want to say to a young business owner who is, feeling like they're getting kicked down, they're trying to start something, they had that vision that you had 20 years ago. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think, man, I'm probably getting myself into trouble here. I think what I tell lots of entrepreneurs is you can't have a plan B.
Yeah.
And I say that you have to be all in on yourself, invested 100%. If you're not all in on you, your employees won't be all in on you, banks won't be all in on you, all these other people, no one else will be all in on you. So obviously, be 100% all in on you. Ownership is messy. It doesn't look pretty. It's not like TV, it is dirty. It is hard. It is lonely. Find some people that you can, peers that you can talk to and vent and just, it's nice there's a saying like, I want to hang out with people that like to jump out of airplanes. Because when you're trying to relate to a lay person, I say this lay person, like my wife works at the university. And when I try to explain to her business things, she's like, looks at me sideways and thinks I'm nuts.
Yeah.
Got to be around other business owners, that people that get it, because if not, it could be really lonely.
Fair enough. Very isolating. It's a very common theme. I'm glad that you have found ways to kind of go, get beyond that, and it's a really great lesson to share with younger business owners. Pete, I would love to have you back in the future for another conversation. I know that there's a lot of wisdom, behind what you do and your team and your people. Let's get you on before you hit that 80 million. Maybe when you're at 40 million.
Yeah.
Let's see where things are at. I have high hopes though for DiStefano, but also, and so until then, I will say until next time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.